Seth Ferranti here, your guide through the dark corners of the criminal underworld. As an outlaw filmmaker, author, and journalist, I've delved deep into the minds of gangsters, drug lords, and prison gangs. But my journey doesn't stop there. Let me take you on a thrilling ride as we explore the hidden stories and untold truths that lurk behind the prison walls.
You know, Miami in the 70s and 80s wasn't all sunshine and beaches, man. It was like a powder keg, and Griselda Blanco was the spark that lit the fuse. We're talking about a time when bullets were flying faster than a speedboat and bodies were floating in the wake. Blanco crushed anyone who dared to cross her, but her tactics were about to get even more unrelenting as the Black Widow drew more into her web of terror.
It happens frequently, and it happened again last night. A cocaine arrest, this one at Miami International Airport. Authorities say there's an avalanche of cocaine crossing our borders, and in an earlier report, we looked at the controversy surrounding its use.
In the late 70s and 80s, the violence in Miami was off the charts as the cocaine trade exploded in the U.S. The city was the main point of entry for the Colombians, and they were making crazy money. In the early days, different crews, both Colombian and Cuban, clashed over the markets and territories, trying to establish who would control the trade. The Black Widow was in the mix, calling shots and giving orders. Given the money to be made, gangsters in South Florida jockeyed for position, and this led to an explosion of violence.
The shootout occurred at about 2:30 this afternoon when two or more Latin males entered the Crown Liquor Store here on the west end of the Dadeland Mall. They were followed by two or three other Latin males, and then the shooting began.
Griselda was willing to do what she had to do, and this contributed to the explosion of violence. The streets of Miami became a war zone. People think Scarface is just a movie, but all that was real, and the Black Widow was at the center of all the action. Be it kilos of cocaine, houses full of money, strategic and retaliatory assassinations, or luxury items and property. It wouldn't last, though. Blanco was arrested by the DEA in 1985 and indicted in Miami on drug and murder charges, but the case fell apart. Her former hitman was ready to testify against her, and the feds were looking at the death penalty, but the case spun into a scandalous fiasco when her former hitman turned witness and an alleged boyfriend both engaged in phone sex calls with staffers in the prosecutor's office.
Now you call me. Go on, pick it up and call.
Blanco went from looking at the death penalty to looking at a decade of prison, a fortunate turn for her. In a situation of extraordinary farce out of nowhere, news broke that a secretary for the lead prosecutor at the state attorney's office had been fired for having phone sex with a key witness for the prosecution. The state attorney's office had to recuse themselves from the investigation into Griselda Blanco. The murder case against her was totally compromised. Blanco pled guilty to trafficking charges from the 1995 indictment and got a light 10-year sentence. The feds never pinned any homicides on her or brought her to justice for any of the alleged killings she ordered, some of which were of her husbands and lovers.
You know, in the 70s and 80s, man, the cocaine cowboys era, it was a super violent environment. So a lot of people ask, how did Griselda, as a woman, establish and maintain control in such a male-dominated scene? I think she did it out of necessity, you know, out of pure ruthlessness. You know, she was a woman, so she knew she had to be more ruthless than any of the men if she was going to get any type of respect. So, you know, you got to give her props for that, because she came in, she did her thing, you know, if we're talking criminal underworld related. You know, she had dudes scared of her, you know, clearly, like the Ochoas, you know, and some of the other, you know, cartel figures, you know, they didn't want to mess with her. She was like a loose cannon. You know, she was known as probably at the end bad for business because of all the violence.
While she was serving time in the feds, Blanco was still dabbling in the drug game. She recruited a significantly younger African-American lover, Charles Crosby, to run her new network in LA, plugging him in with her contacts back home who supplied him with unlimited kilos to sell on the California black market. Blanco figured if she was doing time for cocaine, she might as well keep making money from cocaine. La Madrina, The godmother avoided death row, didn't serve the full term she was sentenced to, and in 2004 was released and deported back to her hometown of Medellin in Colombia. Back on home soil in true style, she vanished without a trace. For 8 years she was in hiding. Apparently she'd retired, but you can't cut a path through the cocaine underworld like that and not make enemies. The documentary Cocaine Cowboys introduced the legend of Griselda Blanco to the general public. The public was previously unaware of any women serving as major drug lords within the cartels, let alone one as ruthless as the Black Widow, who killed her husbands and lovers at will. The documentary was the beginning of the legend, and Cocaine Cowboys 2 focused solely on her exploits.
Is a 69-year-old mother of 4 seen here in one of her many mugshots. As of yesterday, she is dead, gunned down by a motorcycle-riding assassin as she stepped out of a butcher shop in Medellin, Colombia.
On September 3rd, 2012, as the legend of Blanco was becoming more mainstream, she was gunned down outside a butcher shop in Medellin. This was a rare trip out in public for the godmother.